Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel for another episode of the Routes Learning series recorded within Train Simulator. On today's video we're going to be taking a look at the freeware Berks Hants to Bristol and Penzance route, which you can download from the Alan Thompson simulation website, and I've put the link to this in the video description. I have done one previous episode on this route a few years ago, covering the journey between Exmouth and Exeter St Davids, and felt it was now time for a revisit for a much longer journey. I have also covered the section between Bristol and Exeter in my Bristol to Plymouth video in a Voyager a few years ago too, but that was on the Just Trains Western Main Lines route instead. The journey that I'll be driving is on a custom created scenario that I've made, covering the journey of Train 2 Foxtrot 05, which is the 0525 AM service from Bristol Temple Meads through to Exmouth, set in the First Great Western era. This service is actually a very rare service, as there is just one train a day in each direction covering a full through run between Bristol and Exmouth. Normally you'd have to change at Exeter so that you could continue onwards if you're leaving from Bristol and heading towards Exmouth. So there is one service in the morning and the other one in the evening, and I believe that this service runs to get the train into place for services between Exmouth and Taunton throughout the day, before coming back to Bristol in the evening to be stored in the depot again overnight. I've tried to make things interesting in creating this scenario by having some adverse signals, as well as having a few rain showers on our journey down towards Exmouth. Stops along the way will include Weston-super-Mare, Highbridge and Burnham, Bridgewater, Taunton, Exeter St Davids, Exeter Central, St James Park, Polsloe Bridge, Digby Sowton, Newcourt, Topsham, Exton, Lympstone Commando, Lympstone Village, and finally Exmouth. The stops between Topsham and Exmouth are listed as request stops, but I've decided that there are passengers wanting to board and alight at all of them to show you the breaking points for stopping at every station along the route. The total distance for this journey is just over 87 miles. The train that I'm driving for this journey has appeared on the channel a few times now, and it's the Class 158 Express Sprinter Diesel Multiple Unit, which is probably my favourite unit of the Sprinter family. The Class 158s were manufactured by British Rail Engineering Limited at Derby's Litchurch Lane Works between 1989 and 1992, first entering service on the 17th of September 1990. A total of 182 Class 158s were produced, with 8 of these later being converted to Class 159s for use on the route between London Waterloo and Exeter. Each unit is formed of 2 or 3 coaches, and First Great Western extended their 2-coach units to 3-coach units by adding an extra driving coach, so you'll notice that there are 3 drivers' cabs on this train. The Class 158s have an engine under each coach, and there have been 2 different engine types used on the different units, one by Cummins and the other by Perkins. Cummins engined Class 158s have either 350 or 400 horsepower per engine, and Perkins engined Class 158s have 350 horsepower per engine. All Class 158s have a maximum speed of 90 miles per hour, which we will easily be able to get up to for long sections of this journey today. I've now jumped into the cab of the Class 158 just to quickly set up ready for departure. It's a very standard startup procedure and a very standard British cab that we're looking at here. So firstly we need to go over to the right hand side. You can see the master key in front of us there, so I'm going to press Shift and W to activate the master key. And now that I've done that, I'm going to move the reversing handle into the neutral position and then reset the AWS self-test sequence. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to press H to turn on the headlights and K to turn off the tail lights, and so the headlights and marker lights should both now be switched on. Just to quickly talk about the cab controls, so we've got the standard West Code 3-step brake, so move it to the release position. You can see the needle there in the brake gauge is falling to 0, and then step 1, step 2, full service, which is the full brake setting. I try not to use full service braking. Generally you don't really want to go above step 2. Unless you absolutely have to, but there may be a couple of occasions when I might end up in full service on this journey today. I'm going to press I now to turn on the instrument lights, and so as I mentioned, the brake gauge with the needle rising and falling, so 0 on the right hand needle means the brakes are fully released, and the higher it's pointing then the harder the brakes are applied. Next to that we have the speedometer measured in miles per hour, and as already mentioned, the maximum speed for this train is 90 miles per hour. Just below the speedometer we've got the horn control, which is a 2-tone horn controllable with the space bar and the B key. I'm now going to press Ctrl and D to activate the driver safety device. Check the signal ahead is clear, so I'll turn off the driver reminder appliance for now so that we can take power. And now let's set up the GSM-R radio system. So we need to click on the top right hand button. Now enter the train's head code, which in this case is 2, and then enter it like an old phone text message to get the F for Foxtrot, 05, and then the number of the signal in front of us, which is signal 034. Tick that. And now we'll be registering on the radio system. Wait, check head code, and now if you've got the train head code in the top right of the screen, then we are fully activated on the radio system. So now that I've done that, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I need to talk about before departure, but I can't think of anything. So let's just take another look at the train, and then we can depart and head out on our journey towards Exmouth. As we depart away from Bristol Temple Meads, the speed limit here is 25 miles per hour, so I'm just pulling the power back now towards idle. Probably slightly too soon there, but I just want to coast at 25 until we're able to accelerate further. And at this point we've got around 19 miles to go to the first stop, which is Weston-super-Mare. So I've now just shut off the power to allow the train to coast until we can accelerate further. The next speed change will be an increase to the maximum speed for this train, which will be an increase to 90 miles per hour. The speed limit's now going up to 90 at this old style speed post here, and we can accelerate just as we reach that white greyish box you can see on the left hand side there. So now straight up to full power to accelerate up towards 90, and the ruling line speed for pretty much, well, most of the journey to Exeter, other than a section when we go towards Weston-super-Mare and we branch off this line, is going to be 90 or above. We're now coming up on Bedminster Station. We're now coming up on Parson Street Station. You may have noticed that in some of my recent, well, in all of my recent videos in fact, where there is an openable window on the train, I haven't been opening it, and it's just because I found that the train sounds different. And as much as I do love the sound of the train with the window open and how it sounds, I just wanted to demonstrate how different it sounds with the windows closed, so that's why for now I'm not opening the windows in my videos. The speed limit is now further increasing to 100 miles per hour, though of course I can't exceed the maximum speed for this train, which is 90. And at the 100 mile per hour speed post there, we had around 15.5 miles to go. So we now have a single yellow signal. I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. At this point we've actually got around 2 miles to go between this signal and the next signal, so it's a very long signal section, and you don't want to end up slowing down too early, but equally you do need to slow down to ensure that you don't pass a red or forget about the signal that you just passed or something. So I've just gone into a step 1 brake application to bring our speed down for a bit, and then I'm just going to allow the train to coast at a lower speed and then start reapplying the brakes as we get closer to the next signal. So now going to pass through a short tunnel here, and then there's an overbridge just after this tunnel, and at that overbridge we've got around 1.3 miles to go to the next signal. Now at the following overbridge coming up, we've got just under a mile to go to the next signal, and so I'm just going to continue slowing down to prepare to stop. Seems to be a bit of lag here, I'm not quite sure why. I certainly wasn't getting any lag on the practice runs, but when recording it does certainly affect the frame rate. And that's why I lock these videos in Train Simulator at 30 frames a second, whilst I'm playing most of the time with a frame rate of over 60. I just find that it's not consistent when recording, not consistent enough, and so that's why I record my Train Simulator videos at 30 frames per second. So we just saw the end of a siding on the right hand side a moment ago. At the end of the siding where the buffer stops are, we had around half a mile to go to the upcoming signal. So now bringing our speed right down, preparing to stop, assuming that the next signal is displaying a red aspect until we can see otherwise. And I can see that we do have a green signal ahead, so let's get up to full power and start accelerating back up towards the line speed of, well, I was about to say 100 miles per hour, but for us, 90 miles per hour. For anyone who may be interested, if you're not already following me on Facebook, then you can follow me at PTG Rail, and I recently put up a post and I've pinned it to the top of the page detailing some of the video plans that I have for the near future. So there's quite a few videos on there. It lists all of the British train simulator videos that I'm working on. I don't know why I just sounded the horn there. We shouldn't be sounding so early, but hey, we are passing a station. But this is Nailsea and Backwell station, just to interrupt what I was saying before. And at Nailsea and Backwell, just checking my notes, we've got around 11 miles to go. So as I was saying, I've detailed my plans for all of my upcoming British sort of route learning videos that I'd like to do. There may be a couple that I'll add or a couple that I'll remove depending upon the situation at the time. There's been some comments that I really do need to cover some more foreign routes, and I agree, so I'm looking to see what routes I can maybe cover in Germany, Switzerland or Austria or the USA. And I haven't detailed the upcoming Train Sim World videos that I'm going to record, as I haven't decided all of the routes that I'm going to record in Train Sim World yet, but you can expect some Train Sim World videos to be coming soon as well for those Train Sim World fans out there. As we get up towards 90 miles per hour, we need to go between notches 3 and 4 of power to maintain the speed. So we're now approaching 90. I'm just going to cut the power back to notch 4 now. And then as we hit 90 itself, in a moment, I'll just drop back to notch 3 just to ensure that we don't break the maximum speed limit for this unit. So we'll shortly be coming up on Yatton station with around 7 miles to go to Weston-super-Mare. So we're now passing some goods loops. At the next signal after these loops, we've got around 5.5 miles to go, and we've got to start preparing soon to slow down for a speed limit at the junction where we diverge away from this route, the Bristol to Exeter main line, onto the branch into Weston-super-Mare before rejoining this route again after our stop at Weston-super-Mare. Now, I think that in real life this signal should be approach controlled, showing flashing yellows, but for some reason that hasn't been simulated on this route and we just get greens, whereas we're slowing all the way to 40 miles per hour for that junction, so you really do have to prepare to slow down to ensure that you don't end up speeding at the junction itself. So now I've got around 5.5 miles to go to Weston-super-Mare. At the next signal we've got around 4 miles to go, and we've got around 1.5 miles to go to an upcoming 40 mile per hour speed limit. So now I've got around 1.5 miles to go to that 40 limit. I'm shutting off the power now to allow the train to coast. This next level crossing we're just coming up on, we've got around a mile to go to that limit, and I'm going to start applying the brakes shortly after that as we approach the next station that we're passing through, which is Well. Now coming up on Well Station, so I'm going to make a step 2 brake application now to bring our speed down in time for that speed change. As you'll see in a moment, the only warning that we have that we're crossing a junction to the right is this upcoming signal with a feather indicator, which I'm pretty sure isn't realistic, because you really wouldn't want a driver unexpectedly routed this way, not knowing that they have to reduce their speed all the way down to 40. So we're down to 40 in time. I'm just going to allow the train to coast after we've crossed the junction and then joined the single line route towards Weston-super-Mare. The speed limit is quickly increasing up towards 60 miles per hour. And at this point we've got around 2.25 miles to go to our stop. Just going to wait a couple of seconds, and now let's go up to full power to accelerate up towards 60. We'll shortly be coming up on Weston Milton Station with around 1.5 miles to go and 1 mile to an upcoming 25 mile per hour speed limit. So as we get to 60 along here, I'm just going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast, and we'll just lose speed a little bit rather than just trying to maintain the speed at 60. So now passing the warning for the upcoming 25 limit, which is around 2/3 of a mile from the limit itself. I'm going to start braking in a moment as we enter this next right-hand curve between steps 1 and 2. The speed limit itself starts at the end of the curve shortly after the next signal. So I brought the speed off quite nicely here, and then as we get to 25 I'm just going to allow the train to coast into Weston-super-Mare station. Here at Weston-super-Mare, like with most of the stops on this route, I can't see a clear stopping point. There doesn't appear to be any stop markers, so it's difficult to work out where the correct stopping point will be. So I'm going to aim to stop just before the end of the platform roof. So I just applied the brakes into step 1 as we were approaching the platform here. And I'm bringing the speed down quite nicely. I'm just having a look. Yep, I can see the end of the roof now. So I just want to stop just a little bit before that, and then we should be stopped in just about the right place. As we depart away from Weston-super-Mare, the speed limit is still 25 miles per hour, with around 9 miles to go to the next stop, which is Highbridge and Burnham. So as we reach 25, I'm just cutting the power back, and now I'm going to allow the train to coast once again until we can accelerate further in a moment as we join the single line section once again. The speed limit's now increasing up to 60 miles per hour. We can accelerate up towards that just as we reach this overbridge here. So I'm going to accelerate up towards 60, but there will be some speed reductions coming up soon, down to 50 and then 40 miles per hour as we rejoin the Bristol to Exeter main line. I'm going to shut off the power in a moment as we approach the next signal, as the 50 speed limit comes into force shortly after that signal, and then when the speed limit does drop to 50, it's around a quarter of a mile to the upcoming 40 mile per hour speed limit. So I'm just going to cut the power back now. We're approaching the signal here. I'm going to apply the brakes very lightly for that 50 limit just as we pass the signal. So step 1 brake application now. And then I'll briefly coast at 50 before slowing down towards 40 as we cross the second junction. So initially we join the Bristol to Exeter main line on the wrong track, and then we cross over to the correct track, and it's actually at the points where we cross to the correct track that the speed limit drops to 40. And in fact you can see the 40 warning just there, indicating for the left-hand direction. So now I've got the brakes on to slow us down a bit further. So I'm just going to increase to step 2 now, just to ensure that we're down in time, and we're now down to 40, so we can now just coast across the points. As soon as we've crossed these points, then the speed limit is immediately 100 miles per hour, or 90 miles per hour for us, and then in fact shortly the speed limit's going up to 110 miles per hour, which is the fastest speed limit on this route west of Bristol, all the way between Bristol and Penzance. I actually found there's not many key landmarks between here and the next stop, so we're going to start counting signals to ensure that I know when we're in the right place to slow down for Highbridge and Burnham. So at the signal that we've just passed, we've got around 6.5 miles to go. So at this signal, we've got just under 5.5 miles to go. coming up on signal number 3 past the junction where we rejoin the main line, and at this point we've got just over 4 miles to go. Once again, as we reach 90 miles per hour, I'm now going to go between notches 3 and 4 of power to maintain the speed. You can see the sky starting to get darker now as the first of the rainstorms on this journey is about to hit. At this next signal, which is right before an overbridge, so that's one way to remember it, which is signal number 4, we've got just under 3 miles to go. Signal number 5 is coming up now with 1 2/3 of a mile to go. The braking point will be as we enter the next right-hand curve. I'm now going to shut off the power as we reach this overbridge, just to allow the train to coast, and then prepare to brake step 2 as soon as we enter this next curve coming up. Sure the wipers are going fast enough. Visibility is becoming difficult, which can certainly make stopping more of a challenge, and that's one of the reasons why I love adverse weather, just to add to the challenge of the journey. I might be slowing down too early, or I might not. It's difficult to tell, as I'm trying to just look ahead and see if I can see the platforms coming up. I think I can see the station, and I think it's just after this upcoming overbridge, but I'm releasing the brakes for a moment, and now I'm going to reapply. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can see the platforms coming up ahead now. So here at Highbridge and Burnham, to me the stopping point seems like it should be closer to this end of the platform, but for some reason if you do stop closer to this end of the platform the doors won't open, so it's like the platform markers haven't been quite modelled correctly by the route builder. So as a result of that I'm going to have to stop right up at the end of the platform to make sure that the doors will still open. We should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Highbridge and Burnham, the speed limit is still 110 miles per hour, or 90 miles per hour for us, with around 6 1/4 miles to go to the next stop, which is Bridgewater. So yeah, one of the things that I really do love about the Armstrong Powerhouse Sky and Weather Enhancement Pack is the way that you can just put random rainstorms in the middle of scenarios, and I've started including them in some of my custom created scenarios more recently, just to make things a bit more interesting. Like, I don't know if I like want to record a video where it's raining throughout, but to have some rainstorms during the journey, I just think just mixes things up a bit. And it's, as I said before the last stop, it really does add to the challenge, especially when it's raining this hard and you're trying to see what's ahead. So at this signal with a 100 mph speed warning, so for faster trains the speed limit's shortly dropping to 100, we've got just over 5 miles to go. Seems like the rain might be slowing down a little bit now, so I'm just going to slow down the wipers a bit now. Speed limit's now dropped to 100 miles per hour, and at the next signal that should be coming up soon, we've got around 3 3/4 miles to go to Bridgewater. There are a couple of landmarks though between here and Bridgewater that make it a little bit easier to be able to work out when to put on the brakes for the stop. Once again, as we reach 90 miles per hour, I'll need to go between notches 3 and 4 of power to maintain that speed. This signal just here, we've got just over 2 1/4 miles to go to our stop. And so the main landmark here is this large industrial area that we're passing. This lets you know that we're approaching Bridgewater. I'm going to idle the power at a chimney that's going to come up on the right hand side. And then I'm going to apply the brakes approaching the next signal. So you can see that chimney just coming up on the right now. At this point I'm now going to shut off the power, and I'm just going to look out for the next signal ahead. As I said, as we approach the signal I'll make a step 2 brake application, and hopefully that should bring our speed down quite nicely. At the chimney we had around 1 1/4 miles to go. I've just reduced the braking momentarily as we're slowing down a little bit too quickly, but you can see the platform at Bridgewater coming up just ahead. And here at Bridgewater, or I want to stop shortly beyond the platform roof. I think around this point we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Bridgewater, the speed limit here is 100 miles per hour, again 90 miles per hour for us, with just over 11.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Taunton. So we're now passing this arch overbridge on this right-hand curve, and at the signal just after this overbridge, we've got around 8.5 miles to go. Once again, as we get to 90, I'm going to cut back to notch 4 in a moment. Well, and as we get just below 90, should I say, I'm just going to cut back to notch 4. I'll do that now, and the train will slowly creep up to 90, and then I'll cut back to notch 3 and maintain the speed like that once again. There will be a short steep downward gradient though coming up in a short distance as we approach Coglow Junction, which is the junction where the route towards Reading and London Paddington via Westbury will join the Bristol to Exeter main line. So at the signal we've just passed there, we've got around 7 miles to go to Taunton. So we are now approaching Coglow Junction as the tracks split apart here for a moment. I'm going to shut off the power shortly just to make sure that we don't break the speed limit for this train. Shut off the power now. I'll use the brakes to control the speed on this downward gradient, which is at down 1 in 82. And we're now coming up on the junction itself. As soon as you've passed Coglow Junction, the gradient levels out again, so I've just gone straight back up to notch 4 to bring our speed slowly back up towards 90. I think we've passed 6 AM, and I think I can now start using the horn. If I remember rightly, it's between midnight and 6 AM that you're not supposed to use the horn. It must be around 6 AM in the game now, so I'm going to start using the horn at all the whistle boards that I notice. As for anybody who's a regular to my channel knows, I often miss them and don't always sound the horn where I'm supposed to. So at this signal just here, we've got around 3.5 miles to go to Taunton. So at the next signal, which is after this sweeping right-hand curve and directly before an overbridge, we've got around 2.25 miles to go. So at this signal, with the diverging 60 mph Morpeth board for trains turning left, I've now shut off the power, just to allow the train to coast at this point. And I'm going to apply the brakes shortly as we get some crossover points from the opposite track onto this track. Just reached the crossover point, so now I'm going to make a step 2 brake application to bring our speed down. Might be coming a little bit on the fast side here, so I'm just increasing the braking to full service momentarily, something I hate to do, but it was just a very brief burst of full service braking to ensure that our speed down is down in time. When I was making the brake application, I didn't get up to step 2 quick enough, and I should have probably done it just a couple of seconds earlier. Here at Taunton, I'm going to stop around halfway along the platform. I'm going to use the train next to me as a sort of reference guide for where to stop. Again, I couldn't see any clear stopping points here. We should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Taunton, the speed limit is still 100 miles per hour, or 90 miles per hour for us, with just under 31 miles to go to the next stop, which is Exeter St Davids. And this is the longest section between stops on this journey. In fact, once we've reached Exeter St Davids and we go to the towards the Exmouth line, we'll be stopping every mile or two, something like that. So whilst we'll have travelled the majority of the distance for this journey by the time we've reached Exeter, we won't have even done half the actual stops of this journey. There's also no speed changes that affect us between here and just before Exeter. Unfortunately, the route is a little bit laggy in the Taunton area, but it will soon smooth out again as we get away from here. Passing Norton Fitzwarren, which is the start of the West Somerset Railway. Of course, I have covered the West Somerset Railway in a Train Sim World 2 video, and I've also done one of my old route guide videos on the West Somerset Railway 2, which is a documentary where I talk all about the history of the route and so on. I'd love to make some more of them in the future, but they are incredibly time consuming, so we'll just have to see if I'm able to do that or not with the available time that I have. Norton Fitzwarren, we had around 29 miles to go. Once again, we're coming up towards 90, so in a moment I'm going to cut the power back to notch 4. So now we pass some power lines here, then there's going to be an overbridge, and then at the next signal, which is at the start of a left-hand curve, we've got around 26.5 miles to go. So we now pass an arch overbridge on a left-hand curve, followed by a signal, followed by a sort of more rectangular square-shaped overbridge. At this point we've got around 24 miles to go. At some point along here in a moment the gradient changes to an up 1 in 90 grade, so I'm trying to keep an eye out for that, as we will lose speed and we will need to stay in full power so that we lose as little speed as possible. I think we've just reached the up gradient now, as I can see the speedometer was just starting to drop, so I've now gone into full power to try and maintain that speed. This gradient will steepen up towards 1 in 80, and we're going to be on a climbing grade for a few minutes now until we pass through a tunnel. So now passing a White House on the right hand side there. Beyond the White House there's going to be an overbridge, then an underbridge, and then finally a signal, and at this next signal that's just coming up we've got around 21.5 miles to go. So now coming up on a tunnel. At the other end of the tunnel we're going to start on a downgrade of around 1 in 100, so I am going to need to shut off the power as we reach the end of the tunnel and allow the train to coast back up towards 90, and then use the brakes to control the speed if necessary. So the gradient's levelled out in the tunnel, and now we're about to start the downgrade, so I'm just going to cut off the power now and allow the train to coast at this point. There we are, we're now on the downward gradient, which lasts for a good couple of miles or so. See, the rain is now starting again. So at this signal on this right-hand curve, right before this small crossing that we're passing, we've got around 18.5 miles to go. The gradient shallows slightly down to 1 in 115, but the train will still gain speed. And at this next upcoming signal, the gradient is going to shallow further, and then I can start applying power once again to maintain the speed at between notches 3 and 4. Now coming up on Tiverton Parkway station. As we pass through Tiverton Parkway, we had around 16.5 miles to go. There's now going to be a short downward gradient, so I'm just going to cut off the power for a moment, just to ensure that we don't gain too much speed here. I think I might have cut the power off slightly too early there, as we're actually losing more speed than I anticipated. So I'm just going to give us a bit of power back again. That's it, I think we've just entered the downward grade now, so I'm just cutting off the power for a moment. Now the grade's levelled out again, so I'm just going to increase the power back up towards step 5, or sorry to say, notch 5 at this point, just to bring our speed back up towards 90, as I did slow down too much. We're now passing some goods loops, and at the end of these goods loops, we've got around 14.5 miles to go. Gradient's now changing to down 1 in 155, which isn't a particularly steep gradient, but the train will still gain speed very slowly, so I can just coast for now and use the brakes to control the speed if necessary. So at this upcoming signal, right before an arch overbridge, we've got around 12.5 miles to go, and the gradient is going to shallow once again, so I need to go back up to notches 3 and 4 to maintain this speed. this signal just here. We've got around 11 miles to go. So at this crossing coming up with a prominent house on the left hand side just after a signal, and we've got around 8.5 miles to go. We're now passing a particularly tall whistle post, which is a good landmark along here. There's no other whistle posts that are that tall. And as we pass that, we then pass a signal, and we've got around 7 miles to go at that signal. This following signal now marks 5.5 miles to go, so we're getting quite close to Exeter now. There's a couple of speed changes that we will reach before Exeter, a drop to 80, then 65, and then finally we'll be dropping in the speed limit down to 30 and 25. This signal, we've now got just over 4 miles to go. about to cross another girder bridge, and that's another good landmark along here, as there's not too many of these. So we're going to pass the girder bridge and then the next signal. The next signal marks 2 3/4 miles to go, and around a mile to go to the upcoming first speed reduction down to 80 miles per hour. So at this signal, I'm going to idle the power and allow the train to coast at this point. Now passing the warning for the upcoming 80 limit, which is around 2/3 mile from the limit itself. And now a warning for an upcoming 65 speed limit, which comes into force half a mile after the 80 limit. So I've just put the brakes on step 1 as we pass the rear of the signal on the opposite track just there, just to bring our speed down to 80 quite nicely. So we're now just below 80, we're now about to pass the 80 speed board. As I said, around half a mile from an upcoming 65. Now I'm just going to brake for that 65 as we enter this curve here. 65 limit comes into force just after the next signal. I note this signal is double yellow. If this signal is double yellow, which comes just before the bridge coming up, then we are not cleared into Exeter St Davids station. The line from Barnstaple is now joining us from the right-hand side here. So due to the fact that that signal was a double yellow aspect, I'm now just going to apply the brakes a bit more. We've now got a warning for an upcoming 30 mile per hour speed limit, which is 2/3 mile from the limit itself. I can see in the far distance there the upcoming signal guarding the platforms at Exeter St Davids is showing a red aspect, so I'm just going to bring our speed down more now and prepare to stop. I note that unfortunately we are getting a bit of lag here in the Exeter area again. This is one of the reasons why I didn't actually put any static trains in Exeter Yard, is just to try and preserve the frame rate. Now we're just going to stop at the signal and wait for it to clear so that we can proceed into, I believe it's platform 1 at Exeter St Davids station. Okay, so the signal's now cleared. I realise I didn't mention turning on the driver reminder appliance, but I did actually turn it on, and now I've just turned it off so that we can head into Exeter Station. So the speed limit is about to drop to 30 miles per hour, and then very quickly after that is dropping to 25. So I'm not going to accelerate above 25 miles per hour at this point, and when we get to 25 I'm just going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast all of the way into our stop. So we're now coming into Exeter St Davids. We've got this very famous 6-track level crossing here, which I believe is called Red Cow. I will check it in my map book, my railway atlas, and of course caption that in before, well, during the editing process of the video, should I say. Lost my train of thought for a moment there. Probably slowing down a little bit too quickly. Here at Exeter St Davids, we want to stop at the 3, 4 and 6 car stop sign, which is near the end of the platform. We're just coming up on that sign on the left hand side now. Stopping just slightly too early, there we are, and we should now be stopped in just about the right place. As we depart away from Exeter St Davids, the speed limit here is 25 miles per hour, though very quickly dropping to 15 as we cross this junction just here. We're also departing on a single yellow signal, which I have taken note of. And we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to the next stop, which is Exeter Central. So now I've reached 15, I'm going to temporarily shut off the power to allow the train to coast. The gradient is going to change along here to up 1 in 80 and then steepening to a very steep up 1 in 37, which is a very steep gradient for a railway. See the gradient change happening just here, so we're going to lose speed relatively quickly along here. The speed limit's now jumping up to 30 miles per hour, but the next signal is very close. It's only 1/3 of a mile from the previous signal at the end of the platform at Exeter St Davids. And we do have an AWS warning, but I still have to give us some power just to ensure that we don't stop too soon. So I've just used very minimal power here, and just looking for the signal aspect ahead. It's displaying a single yellow. If this signal is displaying a single yellow aspect, then we are cleared all of the way into Exeter Central Station. And as the speed limit's now gone up to 30, we can accelerate up to that 30 mile per hour line speed. So now going to go through a short tunnel here, and then as we come out of the tunnel in a moment, the gradient will be levelling out at the end of this left-hand curve. I will just shut off the power at 30, allow the train to coast. We'll lose some speed as we'll still be on the upward gradient a little bit. Just reaching 30 now, we're just reaching the end of the gradient as well. Shut off the power and allow the train to coast. We start to lose some speed, and now we're entering the platform, so I'm just going to apply step 1 of braking to bring our speed down and then increase that as we enter the platform. Here at Exeter Central, we want to stop at the 3-car stop sign, which is around halfway along the platform. And you can see that just coming up on the left-hand side there. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Exeter Central, the speed limit here is still 30 miles per hour, with just under half a mile to go to the next stop, which is St James Park. So now we've reached 30, we might have actually hit 31 there by accident. Yep, I'm just shut off the power at this point for a moment to allow the train to coast. And then we're going to start on an upward gradient of 1 in 71 in a moment. The speed limit's also increasing further to 70 miles per hour, but we're not going to accelerate just here, as we can see the station coming up just ahead. In fact, allowing the train to coast, we're losing speed quite nicely. I'm not needing to use any braking here. Take care at St James Park, as it is a very short platform, and we want to stop at the S sign, which is right at the end. And we should now be stopped in just about the right place. As you depart away from St James Park, the speed limit is 70 miles per hour, and you are starting on a 1 in 75 upgrade, so take care to make sure the train doesn't roll back. And the way to do that is to make sure the brake is in step 1, apply notch 3, well, you can go above notch 3 if you want, but generally I start in notch 3. Apply notch 3 of power and then release the brakes, and that just prevents a rollback. We've got around this point, around a mile to go to the next stop, which is Polsloe Bridge. I'm idling now at this tunnel exit. We've got a 25 mile per hour speed limit just coming up. I'm just shutting off the power, and then I'm going to apply the brakes as we pass this signal. The 25 mile per hour speed limit is for the junction that we're about to cross to the right onto the Exmouth route. The line straight on is the route towards London Waterloo through Honiton, Yeovil and Salisbury. As we cross this junction to the right, the speed limit's then going to increase up towards 40 miles per hour. We've got just over a third of a mile to go at this point to our stop, and the speed limit's now increasing further to 60 miles per hour, which is the maximum speed limit that we will have now between here and Exmouth. Now going to shut off the power at just above 30 miles per hour and allow the train to coast. You can see the platform coming up just ahead. So now I'm just going to start applying the brakes and bring our speed down in time. Speed up that wiper because it's difficult to see with this heavy rain. The gradient actually changes to a down 1 in 101 gradient before the stop, which will affect your braking. Probably slowed down slightly too much, crawling into the station. I want to stop here just around the area of that passengers must not cross this point sign, which is just coming up on the right hand side. So if I stop here, we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Polsloe Bridge, the speed limit here is 60 miles per hour. We're starting on a 1 in 101 downward gradient, with just under 2 miles to go to the next stop, which is Digby and Sowton. Gradient's now levelling out here just before we cross this small bridge that we're crossing, and then it's going to change in a moment to an upgrade of 1 in 102 shortly before the next overbridge. At this point we've got around a mile to go. Gradient's now going to shallow on this next right hand curve, so I'm just going to shut off the power now and allow the train to coast. It's quite a sharp curve, and then in a moment the curve is sort of going to lighten a bit, the radius, and as the curve radius lightens out I'm then going to apply the brakes for our stop. Gradient's also changed to a down 1 in 128 gradient, which will slightly impact on our braking distance. Curve just lightening out now, so I'm just going to make a step 2 brake application to bring our speed off quite nicely. Don't really want to enter the platform here at Digby and Sowton any faster than 20 miles per hour, as we are still on this downward gradient which affects our braking, and here at Digby and Sowton I want to stop near the end of the platform. We should now be stopped in just about the right place. As we depart away from Digby and Sowton, the speed limit is 60 miles per hour with around 3/4 of a mile to go to the next stop, which is Newcourt. And the gradient's now shallowing shortly after departure away from the previous stop. I'm going to coast the power at just above 40 miles per hour. So we're just getting above 40 now. Now I'm going to shut off the power, allow the train to coast at this point, and then I'm going to start braking as we approach an underbridge with houses on the left hand side. So just approaching that underbridge now. I've made a step 2 brake application. The gradient is going to change to a down 1 in 82 grade before our stop, which again will affect the braking. The rain's now stopped, so I can turn the wipers off. And here at Newcourt station I want to once again stop near the end of the platform. We should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Newcourt, the speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, and we're still on a down 1 in 82 gradient with around 1¼ miles to go to the next stop, which is Topsham. And I'm not sure why we just got an adverse AWS warning there for a green signal. It seems that the AWS might be slightly defective there. So we're accelerating nice and quickly due to the rather steep downward gradient that's about to change to a more level grade. We've just passed the warning for an upcoming 25 mile per hour speed limit, which is around 2/3 of a mile from the limit itself. And now shutting off the power around 55 miles per hour. And I want to start applying the brakes as we approach a left-hand curve coming up, but I do want to be braking before we're actually on the curve. The upcoming 25 mile per hour speed limit comes into force just after the next signal. And so I've got the speed down quite nicely towards 25. You can now see the platform coming up at Topsham station just ahead. And here at Topsham, I want to stop around halfway along the platform. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we depart away from Topsham here, the speed limit is still 25 miles per hour, though soon going up to 50 miles per hour, which will now be the new maximum speed between here and Exmouth, with around 1½ miles to go to the next stop, which is the first of the request stops on this journey at Exton. So I've just shut off the power for a moment just to allow the train to coast. The speed limit has now gone up to 50, so I can accelerate just past the bungalow on the right hand side there. now just cutting the power back at just below 50 miles per hour as we're on a downgrade, just a short downgrade, and now it levels out here at this bridge that we're crossing. So now I need to go between notches 2 and 3 of power to maintain the speed at 50. So at the rear of this signal for the opposite direction, just coming up, we've got around half a mile to go. I'm now going to shut off the power to allow the train to coast. Now we're going to have an AWS warning with a cross sign, which means that it doesn't apply to this direction, and I'm going to now apply the brakes just as we've passed that sign. Probably coming in a little bit on the slow side there, so I'll just release the brakes temporarily and now reapply. Once again, I want to stop near the end of the platform. And so if I use the customer help point as a guide just on the left hand side, if we do stop next to that, then we've definitely got all of the train in the platform. And there it is now, so we should be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Exton, the speed limit is still 50 miles per hour with just under half a mile to go to the next stop and the second request stop of the journey at Lympstone Commando. So I'm now going to shut off the power at between 30 and 35 miles per hour. I'm going to allow the train to coast at this point. I'm going to apply the brakes approaching the next left-hand curve that you can see just coming up. Platform was slightly closer than I realised there, in fact, so I'm just going to make a temporary, very quick burst of full service braking to ensure that we are going to slow down in time. And here at Lympstone Commando, I want to stop at around the second platform sign from the end of the platform, so that's the one just coming up on the left hand side now. So we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As we departed away from Lympstone Commando, the speed limit was still 50 miles per hour with around a mile to go to the next stop and the final of the request stops on this journey, which is Lympstone Village. As we're approaching 50 miles per hour, I'm now going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. Probably just slipped up to 51 briefly there. And now as we enter this left-hand curve with the red rocks that you can see jutting out into the sea on the right-hand side, I'm now applying the brakes for our stop. Might have slowed down a little bit on the early side there. It's slightly further up than I realised. I could have done a lighter brake application or just braked after we'd entered the left-hand curve. You can now see the platform coming up just on the right-hand side here. And here at Lympstone Village, we want to stop at the end of the platform. So we should now be stopping in just about the right place. So as we depart away from Lympstone Village, the speed limit is still 50 miles per hour, with around 2 miles to go to the next and final stop on this journey, or should I say on this rather long journey that we've taken, which is going to be Exmouth. As we get up towards 50 miles per hour, I need to go between notches 2 and 3 of power to maintain that speed. So we've got a little crossing here before the fence changes to a white fence, and at this point we've got around a mile to go. We're now coming up on a permanent distance signal warning to warn us that we're coming up to the end of the track with around 3/4 of a mile to go, so I've just shut off the power at this point. At the whistle board just there, we had around half a mile to go. I'm now going to start applying the brakes just at the end of that right-hand curve. And you can now see Exmouth Station just coming up in the distance. Slowing down maybe a little bit too quickly, but I do want to slow down so that we're going no faster than 10 miles per hour as we enter the platform. I'm sure there must be a speed change here in real life and you don't just go straight from 50 to the end of the line, but that hasn't actually been put in Train Simulator. So we're now down to 10 miles per hour just to crawl into the platform. I'm just going to gradually bring our speed down, and I want to stop just as the buffer stops disappear into the bottom of the window. So if we stop here, we should now be stopped in just about the right place. And so here we are, arrival at Exmouth. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And for the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook, as I mentioned earlier in the video, with the link to my Facebook page, PTG Rail, being in the video description. Also, if you'd like to sponsor this channel or support me on Patreon, then you can visit my Patreon page with the link to that also in the video description. And finally, if you would like to look at or check out my travel and wildlife photography on Instagram, then please check out PTG Travelling, and I'll put the Instagram handle also in the video description. Once again, thank you for watching.